Imagine you're sitting in your house at night and suddenly the lights go out. You check your phone, no Wi-Fi. You look at the TV, there's no TV. You go look outside and the entire neighborhood is now dark. At first you assume it's just a normal blackout. It's alright. The power will be back on in a few minutes. But then you check the news, you get nothing. You try calling a friend or a parent, and the phone network isn't working. You look outside again and the entire city is dark. Then you realize something terrifying. It isn't just the whole city that went black. It's the entire world that lost electricity. What would actually happen? Will society collapse? Will we come together? Or will we discover that modern civilization is way more fragile than we actually think? The first few hours of the blackout. Confused more than anything, people will be wondering and waiting for the power to come back on. But the traffic lights, they stopped working. People on elevators, they're stuck. There's no more subways, and the airports, they're going through problems right now. And while millions of people start to go through their phones to see what's going on, their phones are now dying with no way to charge them. Once the cell towers and the network start to lose power, everything becomes more difficult. But what about the grocery stores? People panic when they feel like they're about to lose access to food. So stores will become crowded real quick like it's Black Friday in that motherfucker. People are gonna be buying water, canned foods, batteries, flashlights, whatever they feel like they may need. But there's a problem. Most modern stores rely on electricity. So ain't no credit cards and no debit cards gonna work in that motherfucker.
Thank you.
The gas might not pump. All the electronic registers, they not gonna work. So suddenly cash becomes extremely important. And without it, you may not even be able to buy anything. You probably just steal it. After about 24 hours, the world will look very different. But the first major problem has hit: the food. Because fridges and freezers, they stopped working now. And the longer that the power stays off, the more food begins to spoil. Modern cities aren't designed for millions of people to lose access to their refrigeration. So people will have to start eating whatever they could before everything in their fridge and freezer goes bad. Eventually, the food in our homes and our stores will start to disappear. So this will raise another question. How do you feed a city when there's no more food coming in? It won't magically appear at no grocery store. It has to be grown, processed, refrigerated, transported, and then sold. And almost every step of that process needs electricity. For many people, the biggest problem will be water. You might turn on the faucet and then expect water to come out. But water has to be pumped and treated and transported through a massive system. That system requires energy. And in some places, they have backup generators that can keep the water running for a while. But generators need fuel, and fuel needs to be transported. So as the blackout continues, you gotta ask, how long can the backup systems actually last? Because that's when the blackout become way more serious. Hospitals now face a nightmare. Hospitals have backup generators. But generators aren't magic, they still require fuel. And hospitals need hella electricity for medical equipment. They have tons of refrigerators and ventilators. They got computers, lights, and operating rooms. So with all that, doctors and nurses can still help people, but soon there will be time for some difficult decisions. Because if a hospital has limited fuel for its generators, what's gonna happen when the fuel begins to run out? That's one dark part about this scenario, because a society without electricity wouldn't just be inconvenient. It could actually be life-threatening for people who depend on modern technology. Cities are now unrecognizable. Imagine being in a major city at night. Usually you would see millions of lights from the buildings, street lights, cars, and traffic. But now the entire city is dark. Without traffic lights or public transportation, cities will become very hard to navigate. The bigger the city, the bigger the problem. Because the systems in those cities are dependent on by millions of people. With cities now difficult to survive in, you gotta ask, should I stay in the city or should I go to a rural area? Because rural areas may have some advantages. People out there, they may have wells and gardens, probably have firewood, generators, and probably hella space. But millions of people can just simply move into the countryside. So the world will be forced to adapt to an environment the modern world wasn't really designed for. After a week, things get more serious. The food is disappearing, the water systems are failing, fuel is scarce, and communications is way more difficult now. So now the government will have to decide how to distribute limited resources. This is when society could go in either two ways. We could cooperate, share food and skills. The farmers would be extremely important, but so would be electricians, mechanics, and doctors, and engineers. But on the other hand, there could be a panic, resource fights, stores looted in desperation. Would people immediately become violent and society collapse? Or would people come together to survive? That debate is controversial because while most people would help the people that's around them, scarce resources and desperation can change someone. But what happens to the economy? Would the global economy transform? Stock markets would change, businesses will close, and supply chains break down. But money itself may become less than actual resources like food and water, medicine and fuel, tools and skills. You might have millions of dollars in your bank, but how you gonna use it if the banking systems are offline or failing? So the economy would shift from how much money do you have to how many resources can you provide? What resources can you provide? But what about the internet? At first, people still use devices that have batteries, but the internet is definitely one of the biggest casualties. And this infrastructure needs huge amounts of electricity to work. The servers, the data centers, cell towers, and routers all need electricity. And without power, modern internet gradually disappears. You can't go to social media or search online for answers. So rumors gonna spread. Imagine hearing that a major city has collapsed. You ain't got no way to verify it to check its legitimacy. Information is now a valuable resource. Now it's been 30 days and the electricity turns back on. After learning new skills like growing food and maybe repairing things, the lights turn right back on and the phones start charging again. But the world will never be the same because people now realize how powerful modern civilization really is. We can communicate instantly between continents, access to almost all information, and travel the world in hours. We can freeze food for weeks to months and perform complex medical procedures. But the most terrifying part of this scenario is that we don't realize how dependent we are until the lights go out.